Know, see and speak out against domestic abuse. In this Know, See, Speak Out webinar, we'll be talking about knowing what domestic abuse is and who it affects. See, seeing the warning signs, and speaking out, how to ask the question and know what to say next so that people can speak out against domestic abuse.
Domestic abuse occurs within lots of different sorts of relationships. It can occur between those who are partners or ex-partners, regardless of sexuality or gender, as well as in familial relationships, between family members, including adolescent to parent violence and so-called honour-based violence. This means that abuse could be coming from a partner or ex-partner. Within a current relationship, this could be a same-sex relationship, a marriage, long or short-term relationships, or casual partners. Or perhaps the abuse is coming from an ex-partner, where the relationship has ended, but abuse continues. Abuse also happens within familial relationships, regardless of whether you share the same household. This could be from parent to adolescent, adolescent to parent, sibling abuse, or from any other family member. Honour-based violence also happens within family structures. Honour-based violence is a collection of practices used to control behaviour within families in order to protect the perceived cultural and/or religious beliefs. You might think that domestic abuse only happens to some people. We may believe domestic abuse only affects women, only happens in new relationships, or affects some members of society more than others. But domestic abuse can happen to anyone. Domestic abuse affects everyone regardless of their sexuality or gender. True or false? Domestic abuse happens because of drug and alcohol, mental health, or background. False. None of these things cause domestic abuse. Domestic abuse is rooted in power and control. There are very specific tactics that are used with the intention of gaining power and control. All of these, substance misuse, mental health problems, childhood experiences, or stress, do not cause domestic abuse. They're an excuse. Research shows that domestic abuse is a deeply gendered issue and disproportionately affects women. For example, the Metropolitan Police statistics show that male violence against women made up 85% of reported domestic violence incidents. Domestic violence is characterised as patterned, repeated behaviour intended to assert power and control over the victim. Of those who experience 4 or more incidents of violence, 89% are women. However, that does not mean that men don't experience abuse. There are conflicting statistics, but we know that men can and do experience high-risk domestic abuse. Men and domestic abuse. Statistics from Mankind show that 576,000 men were victims of partner abuse during 2018 to 19. In 2017 to 18, 11% of male victims considered taking their own life due to partner abuse. Statistics indicate that half of male victims do not disclose abuse. And in 2018 to 19, 16 men were killed by their current or ex-partners. Refuge provision for men is severely limited. Men suffer many similar barriers to support, but may feel increased shame, feeling at fault, or being reluctant to seek help due to the social taboo of men's abuse. A lack of awareness about services can also put men off from reporting abuse and seeking help. Women and domestic abuse. 1.2 million women experienced domestic abuse between 2017 and 18. The average time in an abusive relationship was 3.5 years before seeking support. A woman will experience on average 35 abusive incidents before seeking support. 80 women were killed at the hands of a partner or ex-partner between 2017 and 18. Statistically, women between the ages of 20 and 24 are most at risk of domestic abuse. This report from the Crime Survey for England and Wales shows that women were more likely than men to be victims of domestic abuse in the last year. Domestic abuse doesn't discriminate. We know that it happens to all ages, races, religions, and genders, but there are different problems and different barriers for different people. Some problems that can be more prominent in some communities are control through immigration status, isolation and control through language and translation, forced marriage, honour-based violence, and female genital mutilation. Disabled women are twice as likely to experience domestic abuse than non-disabled women, and disabled men experience a similar rate of domestic abuse as non-disabled women. People with disabilities may also experience domestic abuse in wider context, from significant others, including intimate partners, family members, personal care assistants, and care professionals. Specific tactics of abuse can centre around the disability, where the abusive party would withhold, destroy, or manipulate medical equipment, access to communication, medication, personal care, meals, or transportation. The Sigma survey of gay men and lesbians suggested that 1 in 4 individuals in same-sex relationships experience domestic abuse at some time. These are similar figures to those for heterosexual domestic abuse against women. Abusers may use tactics based on sexual orientation or gender history to control and isolate a victim. It's important to remember that these tools are only effective because they occur in a broader context, where LGBT people may be marginalised or discriminated against because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. Research suggests that LGBT people's fears of experiencing homophobia or transphobia from services are a major barrier to seeking help. Lifetime experiences of discrimination around sexual orientation and gender identity impact on help seeking. Fear of discrimination from public bodies can have a real detrimental effect on the likelihood of a transgender person reporting abuse. Transgender people face greater isolation and can be particularly at risk of having their gender used as a method of control, emotionally, or by exerting control through the fear of being publicly shamed or outed by a partner. Age. Domestic violence is often portrayed as something that happens to younger women. Older women's experiences can be put under the category of elder abuse. Older victims experience abuse for twice as long before seeking help as those aged under 61, and nearly half have a disability. Yet older clients are hugely underrepresented amongst domestic abuse services. There are significant barriers for older people seeking support. For instance, they're more likely to worry about their independence, losing financial control, leaving a lifetime home, being placed into care, and the reaction of adult children. They can also feel ashamed or at fault for the abuse. It can be compounded if the abuse has been happening for a very long time, or if the abuse has started in a new relationship started later in life. This chart from the Crime Survey for England and Wales shows that women aged 20 to 24 years old were more likely to be victims of domestic abuse than any other woman.
Abusive relationships operate in cycles of behaviour. They start with a honeymoon and cycle through a period of tension building and then an explosion, and then back into honeymoon again. The cycle is present in all types of relationship, with abusive behaviour from children, within a family, from a carer, or in a romantic relationship. Understanding the cycle helps us to understand the ways abuse starts, often with small actions or with things that might seem lovely at first. An abusive person's actions are repetitive and usually follow a pattern. This pattern will look different and include different behaviours for different people. Some describe that the phases happen in a different order, or that in their relationship one is absent altogether. The longest honeymoon will be at the beginning of the relationship, before most of the abuse begins. In this time, we build trust, build commitment, and develop an emotional bond. But sometimes it can seem excessive, with lots of gifts, commitment, and intimacy. This is called love bombing. It's a grooming behaviour that's done to draw us into a committed relationship quickly, and is the first stage in gaining control. After this honeymoon, tension might start to build, and some verbal, emotional, or financial abuse may occur. This behaviour intensifies, and the person experiencing abuse feels as though any wrong move will cause an explosion of violence or abuse. This is very frightening, and there is a sense of growing danger. An explosion happens when the tension has built up and finally erupts. This is the peak of the abuse and the release of tension for the person being abusive. When the incident is over, the person needs to manage the situation they have created to maintain the relationship. They use remorse, increase intimacy, and make promises, blame the abuse on external factors like alcohol or stress, and say it won't happen again.
They deny or gloss over the abuse. We have identified 9 possible early warning signs that may occur at the start of an abusive relationship. These warning signs may appear as part or alongside the honeymoon tactics. 1. Intensity. Things get serious too quickly. They want to see you all of the time. There's lots of very loving behaviour. You're making commitments before you feel ready. And there are declarations of love or never having felt like this before. 2. Jealousy. They want you all to themselves. They want to know where you're going and who you're with. They want you to cut off contact with exes or people they think of as a threat. They use jealousy to manipulate you. They have irrational fears, are paranoid, and make accusations. They equate jealousy with love. 3. Control. They have strong opinions on who you see and what you do. They say they are concerned for you. They have set ideas for the roles you play in the relationship. They expect things done a certain way. They control what you wear, check your phone, and your browser history. 4. Isolation. It's just the two of you against the world. They prevent you from seeing friends or being social. They don't like your friends or family. They make it uncomfortable to have people over to your home. They move home or block access to travel or your phone. 5. Criticism. Nitpicking, backhanded compliments and name-calling, cruel jokes or banter, ridiculing your values or beliefs. They say they are the only one that could put up with you. They make you feel worthless. 6. Sabotage. Making sure things go wrong for you. Picking a fight when you're about to go out, hiding your things, turning up unexpectedly, meltdowns or tantrums, spreading rumours or lies. 7. Blame. They always blame other people for their feelings and problems. They never feel that the abuse is their fault. They feel like a victim and you're made to feel guilty. They say things like, "You made me," or "if you hadn't." 8. Anger. They are hypersensitive. They feel the world is against them. It seems like anger is their default emotion. Their anger seems out of proportion with the problem. There are outbursts and fights. They threaten and intimidate other people. 9. History. You don't know much about their past relationships. Some topics are off limits. All past relationship breakdowns were the other person's fault. Partners have been hurt in the past, or you're told not to listen to the lies that are being told. You might be feeling really frustrated if you're recognising these signs now, but didn't at the time. Remember that the honeymoon cycle is used to disguise these warning signs, and grooming tactics are used to gain control in a relationship. The only person responsible for being abusive is the person acting in that way. If you're feeling unsafe or are in an abusive relationship right now, please don't make changes without consulting a professional. Making changes can be really dangerous in an abusive relationship and make you much less safe. There are always people you can talk to. Being able to ask the question and knowing what to say next can help someone who's experiencing domestic abuse. About abuse. When someone discloses abuse, it can be helpful to bear in mind the following when asking about the disclosure. Find a quiet, private place to talk and give time and space for discussion. Sensitively ask open questions. Discuss confidentiality and information sharing and explain that you may not be able to keep everything confidential. Use non-judgmental tones, words, and body language. Keep it clear and simple. Remember, asking is the first step for improving our response to domestic abuse. Be aware of body language and facial expressions. Give the victim time. Actively listen to the victim. Be mindful of tone of voice. Be empathetic. Don't impose your opinion on what they should do. Ways to engage victims. We need to be really aware of minimization. Avoid using jargon. Be non-judgmental. Offer options and signpost. Enquire if the victim is engaging with other services. Be aware that stress and trauma affect memory. Ask if they have any questions. Key phrases to be aware of. It was only. She or he just. She or he didn't know what they were doing. It's not their fault. It shouldn't have. It was my fault really because. It was only an argument. It's not often. They can be really lovely. We're okay most of the time. Or it's only when they drink. Disclosure. Recognise sometimes subtle signs. Ask about abuse. Don't make judgments. Validate. Show that you believe the disclosure and don't question its validity. Document where possible. Don't worry about being an expert, but refer on to agencies that can help safely. Signs that could alert you. Injuries that do not seem consistent with the explanation. A partner that will not leave the client alone, either at home or during an appointment. A carer who speaks on behalf of a patient. A regular pattern or visits to services. Missed appointments with vague explanations. Depression, negative coping strategies, self-harm. Response. The way you respond is important. Examples of this might be, you didn't cause this, it isn't your fault. You don't deserve to be hurt. I'm concerned for your safety and well-being. I believe you. There is help and support for you. Domestic abuse is not acceptable. This might be the first time the victim has told anyone, so remain calm and be supportive. Refer on to services who can give expert advice and support.
Domestic abuse can happen to anyone, but there are services available to help. In an emergency, always call 999 or use the 999 BSL app. In a non-emergency, you can call the Kent or Medway helpline or use the victim support live chat function. To find out more about the services that are available in Kent and Medway, head to www.domesticabuseservices.org.uk.